We're in great shape. We're doing it. Hello, gang. Thanks for staying with us. It is funny because most of this crew was in the master class, and we were just having this conversation. I'm going to introduce you to the person you've been talking to for the past hour. It's great. This makes sense. Hi, I'm Dan Rosenberg. I'm the director of the Visiting Writers Series, and as is my robotic duty, I would like to start by thanking NYSCA, the New York State Council for the Arts, that gives us all the money to offer the Visiting Writers Series, and the Visiting Writers Series itself is part of the Visiting Artist Program at Wells, which is the umbrella organization that contributes to all of the public-facing arts programming that we do, and NYSCA funds that whole big program, and it's actually really lovely and great, and we are very grateful for that support. So that's my obligatory disclaimer here. And now I get the distinct pleasure, I do a lot of these introductions, but this one I get to welcome back home to our alma mater, our first visiting writer of the semester, Bekkah Frisch. I want to start by noting her generosity, the very Wellsian spirit with which she returned to campus. She's been generous with her time and expertise. Even in the discussions about this visit, what was clearly a top priority for Bekkah was giving back to our community, and particularly the next generation of students. This was explicitly and emphatically one of Bekkah's main goals for coming here. And she has also been very gentle in her instructing me on what snacks are appropriate for a visiting writers event. I did not know the importance of the cider, and now I know. So this is very good. And the Oreos, yeah. Bekkah has been on campus all afternoon and just finished this wonderful master class, and I'm excited to hear her share her work with us all tonight. And I wanted to, we're a little bit late because I was loitering to see if Deb was going to show up, because I wanted to share briefly that Bekkah began an essay that she published online singling out Deb's psycholinguistics class in particular as an experience at Wells that kindled her fascination with perspective, with how a person's identity can be shaped by the language that they speak. Bekkah noted that she thinks about what she learned in that class when working in marketing and when writing dialogue, which is to say to all my dear English majors, like, go take psycholinguistics. Go take, what else was it? Stats, right? Yeah. Check out the business offerings, right? This is one of the benefits of being at Wells is that you have access to the broad range of expertise. And I like that this is being streamed. Deb just texted me a frowny face. So I think she's very disappointed to not be here with us. But to introduce Bekkah. After graduating from Wells in 2014, she worked in marketing for several years in a variety of capacities, rising up to be a marketing executive last year before, in a daring feat of bad timing, she left that job and pivoted to purchase a local media business, iHeart Oswego, right when the book was coming out. Tough timing. All the while, she's been writing. The Great Quiet is her debut novel, which launched in August of 2023. There are copies of the novel over there for sale. She'd be glad to sign them for you. I'd be glad to take your money. I promise to give it to her. We can do that through Venmo, credit cards, cold hard cash. That's it. Those are the three, right? And I'll remind you of that at the end. So Kirkus Reviews called The Great Quiet an ambitious, moving saga, says it right there on the cover, that connects the personal and the global, illustrating how a youthful friendship can have tender, lasting effects. And part of what struck me is the depth of empathy in the story, the clear and clear-eyed investment in parts of world history that seem almost impossibly remote and therefore easy to ignore to most Americans. The real-life background to this fictional story is that France detonated nearly 200 nuclear bombs in the South Pacific as part of their nuclear testing program. I didn't know anything about this history before reading Bekkah's book, but it drove me to do some research and learn about the 110,000 people in French Polynesia who suffered effects from the radioactive fallout of just one of these tests, an episode that I then discovered she mentions in the afterword of the book that I hadn't gotten to yet when I went and did my own research. So the book takes place against the backdrop of such events, but its drama happens on a human scale, which we can not only understand but feel. One teenage girl's struggle with cancer, single parents trying to survive and build a future for their families, the struggles of family and friends that are both unique, shaped by the particulars of their histories and those languages, but also fundamentally familiar because they're deeply human. I believe that one of the central goals of storytelling is to expand our ability to empathize, and The Great Quiet invites us to do exactly that. Bekkah's working on her next novel now, but outside of writing, she enjoys swimming, traveling, and memes. She's an outspoken advocate for mental health as well. Bekkah lives in Fulton, New York, with her husband, daughter, who we're definitely going to hear over the course of this reading, 100%, and their 2 dogs. So please join me in welcoming Bekkah Frisch.
Thanks, Dan. All right, so we're going to get started. All right. So this scene is towards the beginning of the novel. There are the 2 main characters, Ari and Nachua, are getting ready to practice a dance that is related to their cultural heritage. The bell rings, signaling the end of school. Ari heads outside and leans against a boulder by the edge of the dirt path that separates the school from the rest of the village. She's chit-chatted with most of her classmates and twirled a lock of her hair around her finger 4 different times before realizing Nachua is sitting in the tree across the way, picking at his nails and waiting for her. A laugh springs up from her belly, and she calls out to him. In one smooth motion, he hops down and heads her way, wavy dark hair sliding over dancing eyes. "Where have you been?" he asks with fake exasperation, hands thrown comically in the air. "Oh, stop that, Nachua." She slaps his arm lightly, a smile teasing the edge of her lips. "I was up there forever. Don't you ever look around?" Ari groans and pushes herself off the rock. "I told you I'd be waiting by the path. Why couldn't you just walk up and tell me when you were ready to go?" She wipes imaginary dirt off the back of her shorts. "It's more fun this way. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to grab the coconuts. Our old groundskeeper stopped by last night and he got them down for us." "Cool. We should go paddleboarding sometime soon then. Maybe tonight, since the coconuts are taken care of? I haven't gone in forever, and Joe's place always does half-price rentals in the afternoon." "I don't know about tonight. It'll be dark by the time we get over there." Nachua turns to give a group of his buddies high fives. A few of them are carrying fishing poles. Ari watches enviously as the guys head toward the water. "Ugh, fine. What do you want to do then? Go fishing?" She jerks her head towards the retreating group. "Nah, my pole's busted. We could practice the dance together at my house." "You're so good at it, you hardly need to practice." She scuffs her sneaker against the dirty, dusty ground. "You'll just spend the time laughing at me." Nachua giggles. "But you have to practice to get better. Besides, we're supposed to do it together." "I can do it by myself, and I will," she replies stubbornly. "We can practice together once I figure out my part a little more. You keep putting off practicing, that day'll never come." "Nachua, you say that like I never do the routine. I'm working on it. Twice a week with Papa and Nona Ali. They're good teachers because they don't laugh at me. If we don't do it together, you'll never get better at it. We do it together every week during our lessons. Besides, it's your fault I don't want to practice with you the rest of the time anyway. You and your teasing." She crosses her arms in feigned anger, but she can't entirely tame her smile. "Can't help it," he responds with a shrug. "Your attempts at dancing are funny. A little sad, but funny. Are you trying to inspire me to never dance again? Because it's working." Okay. That was the last of the teasing. Promise, as long as you practice today." He gestures towards the path that will take them inland. "Nachua, can't you let it go?" She takes another glance over Nachua's shoulder at the dancing waves cheerfully winking at her in the late afternoon sun. Come on, it'll be more fun if we start doing the whole routine side by side more often. She shakes her head and sighs. I don't want to hear a single laugh. Not now, and certainly not later. Nachua grins as they walk down the path. I'll do what I can. Fine. But first, I have to stop at the post office. Papa asked me to grab the mail. After Ari stuffs the mail in her backpack, they continue on in jovial silence under the palm trees lining the sidewalks, their shadows casually overlapping and drifting apart. Quit bumping into me, would you? Not being able to dance is one thing, but can't you at least walk straight? I would, but you're in my way. She digs playfully into his side with her elbow. By the way, how do you think you did on that science test? The two continue chatting as they make their way to the northeastern edge of town, then use a twisted footpath to cut through a wooded area with the confidence that only comes from lifelong familiarity. A few minutes later, they emerge on a well-groomed lawn shaded by several ancient rain trees. A cluster of fruit trees, including the troublesome coconut, backs up to a pension that can accommodate up to 12 vacationing couples. Nachua's mother has been the sole proprietor of the hotel since her parents retired almost a decade before. There have been few guests roaming its halls these days, even though peak tourism season has technically already started. Both mother and son have downplayed the trend, saying only that bookings usually pick up towards the end of winter. Ari notices that this is the third week in a row the place seems deserted. But Nachua doesn't mention it, and she has a dance to practice, so she brushes it off. The Reinas will be fine. They always are. The nice part about the pension being empty is that Tanti Reina will let them hang out wherever they want. Courtyard or lawn? Nachua asks. Lawn. Worried about falling? He asks, a smirk flirting with the edge of his lips. I thought you said you weren't going to laugh at me. I'm not laughing. Nachua puts his hands up in mock defensiveness. I'm just wondering why the lawn. Mama has the fountain going. Well, you didn't tell me that. Maybe we can dip our feet in after, she says in a conspiratorial whisper. Don't let her see you if you do. You know how Mama is with that fountain. They make their way to the front of the pension, the temperature a few degrees hotter in the sunny courtyard. Nachua heads inside the shed to track down the ancient boombox and the right cassette tape. Ari had long ago given up asking Nachua if they could use the sound system that his mom Angela sets up whenever there are guests in the pension. She only plays boring background music with harps and birds chirping, but she's incredibly protective over it. Instead of worrying about the speakers, Ari heads straight over to the semicircular courtyard and splashes some fountain water on the smooth cobblestones with her hands. Guests invariably comment on how tropical and bohemian it looks, so Nachua's mom is paranoid about anyone mentioning that the stones and most of the other building supplies were shipped over from England in the 70s. A few plain benches made by local craftsmen dot the edges of the courtyard underneath fruit-bearing starfruit trees that Angela planted under advice from a board member with the Tourism Association, who claimed that they smell like paradise. She always says they just smell like starfruit and taste like shit. And Ari wonders why she went along with the tourism board if she hates starfruit so much. The crown jewel of the courtyard is undoubtedly the hand-carved stone fountain. Water springs from the hands of a voluptuous woman who could just as easily pass for a Greek goddess as a Polynesian maiden, what with the olive leaf laurel across her brow and flowing dress draped carelessly across her bosom. Nachua's mom is always complaining about the scandalous statue that the tourism board had forced on her parents. The board said it would give the pension a reputation. Whether that's a good thing or not is another question, but in the end, they didn't argue with the tourism board either. And so the maiden's dress rests outrageously low, a strap casually sitting at her elbow. Nachua and Ari don't care about the maiden or her stone robes, no matter how often Angela gripes about it. They simply work through the dance routine that Manu, Nona Ali, and Pop Tama are teaching them. The dance is an ancient one that tells the history of their people, before the French or English arrived and started outlawing their way of life. Many dances from that time are lost, but this one survived, so it's vital they learn it well. Ari's grateful this routine doesn't involve any touching between the dancers. A perk of having her dad and grandparents teach the dances, she supposes. Nachua makes enough fun of her when they're simply dancing next to each other. She tries to tell herself that's the only reason it'd be embarrassing to get up close and personal. In her distraction, she almost misses her cue. Even though he's not leading her, Nachua still seems to catch her every mistake. You're not supposed to move your hips so harshly. This part calls for the varu movement, where your hips go in figure eights. Why do you keep doing the afata instead? Nachua attempts to demonstrate the smoother movement the dance calls for. Well, you know what I mean, he says. Sorry, I just can't concentrate today, Ari replies, already breathing hard. You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I keep copying your part on accident, so it's like I've done the dance 2 or 3 times already. She hopes he won't notice the lie. Why does my stomach cramp up so fast every time I do this damn dance? I must be more out of shape than I thought. Nachua rolls his eyes and giggles. This is why we have to practice together, so you learn to concentrate on your own part. Again? She nods, still trying to catch her breath. All right, start the music. The pair run through the routine twice more before Ari heads for one of the benches. I gotta sit down, Nachua. I'm bushed. No problem. Want something to drink? We've got some cold tea in the fridge. I don't want to be any trouble, Ari says instinctively. It's fine. I'm going to grab some for myself anyway. Okay, get me a glass then. After Nachua leaves, she lays across the bench, head hanging low off the edge. She decides that maybe sneaking a quick dip of her feet in the fountain will wake her up. But when she stands, her vision goes black and her head pounds. She falls back on the bench heavily, and her eyesight returns almost immediately. What the hell? Nachua returns with 2 glasses of iced tea, and Ari's fingers are trembling when she takes the glass. He doesn't say anything about it, though he has to notice. Instead, he takes a seat beside her and sneaks glances at her way while pretending to stare at the fountain. After several long swigs of tea, Ari turns to him and says, "Thanks for not laughing today." "No problem. It's not much fun when you get mad at me anyway." She laughs. Saying things like that does not score you any points. "I'm not trying to score any points, Ari. Geez, you're practically my sister." "I didn't mean those kinds of points. I only want those kinds of points with Paulette, or maybe Marie. I'm not fussy." "Gross, Nachua. I don't want to hear about your weird fantasies." "Hey, it's not weird," he says. "Most of the guys in our class have a crush on Paulette." "Pfft, that bitch," Ari huffs through her nose. "The rest of us like some attention now and again, too." Nachua starts to speak, but she cuts him off. "Not from you." "Well, good, because you owe me, though. Without my help, your dance moves would look like the tourists." In one smooth move, he stands, puts his hands under his armpits, and swings his elbows around. Squawk, squawk, squawk. Okay, I get it. At least I'm getting better. Her smile comes as easily as the banter. No thanks to the dance partner who keeps laughing at me. I didn't laugh this time. Right. What does squawking like a chicken count as? Do I have time for one more? All right, fabulous. All right, next we're gonna skip ahead a bit. And we're going to skip to just after Ari receives her diagnosis, which was after an accident. Over the next few days, schoolmates, relatives, and friends flood the Fonuas home with their food and their sympathies. "We're so relieved that they found you and that you're okay," Aunt Wendy says when she brings Ari a cup of hot tea. It's as if everyone has implicitly decided to focus on the accident and ignore the very real myeloma diagnosis that followed on its heels. Ari puts on a brave face and attempts polite conversation, but she spends most of her time in bed, avoiding the extended visits and the exhausting good cheer of each well-wisher. Part of her withdrawal comes from her Walkman, which Nona Ali left behind after their dinner earlier that week. The tape wasn't harmed, but the player is cracked, and she doesn't have the strength to hold it together as it plays. So she stares at the ceiling and runs through the story in her mind, mouthing the words as she imagines every lilt in Mama's voice. She doesn't have to deal with the visitors for very long, at least. Papa keeps hovering and obsessing over whether she needs more water or help getting up, but company keeps him distracted. The town council has only given him a few days to stay at home because he's so new, and Ari's counting the hours until he's forced to leave her alone. Not like his worrying is going to change anything. By Friday, the flow of guests slows to a trickle, and her father is driving her up the wall. He won't even let her close her bedroom door. After school lets out, Nachua stops by. She can smell the crepes he's bought, doubtless from one of the roulottes down by the dock. The screen door creaks when he walks in. "Hi, Mr. Fonua," he greets her father. "Good afternoon, Nachua." Ari wonders why the two sound so reserved, and then it hits her. She'd convinced Nachua that her father wanting to adopt him was her dad's way of insulting his mom. Maybe they'd come to blows while she was out of commission. "Ari's in her room," her father adds. "Thanks. I brought some crepes. Do you want one?" "Maybe later. Good luck getting Ari to eat. She hasn't even left her room yet today. And trust me, I've tried everything." Ari sighs and mentally addresses her father. "At least in here, you aren't staring at my every move while pretending to work on your political crap." When Nachua comes through her open door, he seems surprised to find her under a blanket so late in the day. Suddenly, she wishes she'd changed her clothes or had Papa open a window. She knows the room smells like it belongs to an invalid, and she's briefly embarrassed. "Hi." Nachua holds the crepes up in front of his nose. "Brought you something." "Thanks, but I'm not hungry." She turns on her side. Let him hang on to the sweet-smelling treats. "I've got your top 3 favorite kinds," he adds. Ari sighs and pulls herself up in bed, her back against the wall. "You got chocolate hazelnut in there somewhere?" "Yep." He sounds proud, and he holds out one of the paper-wrapped crepes expectantly. She accepts and takes a small bite. Thank you." Nacho sets the other crepes on the wooden chest and drops his backpack next to them. "So, how are you feeling?" "I'm okay, just tired. Can you open the window?" Nachua throws it open, then sits back on the chest. In the silence that follows, he wrings his hands. "I'm sorry about what happened," he says finally. "Not your fault," she replies, keeping her responses short and hoping he'll leave soon to go talk to her father, like all the other visitors have this week. Though, from the sounds of it, talking to Papa is the last thing Nachua wants to do right now. "Listen," he fiddles with a strap on his backpack and avoids meeting her eyes. "About what we talked about at the tree." Ari's fingers find the edge of her bed sheets and rub them nervously. She's afraid to look at him in the silence that follows. "Can we talk about it some other time?" Her voice is gentle, apologetic. She'd acted rotten towards him that day, and yet he'd come back that night and helped her anyway. "I just need to know." He hesitates. He speaks his next words carefully, handling the syllables like bits of broken glass. "Why are you really trying to keep me out of your family?" Unwelcome tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She wipes them away with closed fists. "You don't want to be my brother." She tries to sound determined, but her voice trembles. "Why not?" She looks toward the door and lowers her voice. "Think about it. All my brothers are dead." Nachua scrunches up his face in confusion. "What's this all about anyway? You think your family is cursed or something?" Ari shakes her head. "No, it's not like that. I mean, it could be, I guess, but I don't think so." "Then what's wrong?" "Close the door?" she asks. After it swings closed, she whispers, "I couldn't bear if something happened to you." "It'll be fine. I'm fine." "I know, but it's not just about you. My dad..." She closes her eyes, and despite her best efforts, a few tears escape and roll down her cheeks. Nachua gulps. She feels bad for making him squirm, but he's the one who wanted to talk about this. "My dad is like trying to replace Henri and Oscar and it makes me really mad that he thinks he can do that. She opens her eyes, hoping they're not red. I'm sorry, he says. Ari can tell from his quiet tone and the way he refuses to meet her eyes that he's fighting the urge to run from the room. I didn't mean to pry. No, it's okay. You deserved an explanation and an apology. I hadn't sorted out how I felt about it when you showed up at the tree, and then I was so mean. Hey, I get it. I don't know what I would have done in your shoes. He heads over to her and gives her a hug. I'm sure things will work out either way. She leans into him. Her next words are muffled because she speaks into his stomach. What's that? He pulls back. I'm really, really sorry. You think we can just forget it ever happened? Already done. He pats her hair awkwardly, then heads back to his spot on the wooden chest. Anyway, we got our science tests back today. Oh, how'd you do? She sniffs and wipes at her face with her hands. She's feeling drained, especially since she didn't tell Nachua the whole truth again. But no one can know her secret. She's glad Nachua isn't going to press her any further. Fine, but you did better. He fishes some papers out of the front pocket of his backpack and hands them over. I got a 95? No way, Ari says. She attempts a little smirk. Yahweh, he replies. I only got a 77. Should have paid more attention to the teacher and less to the back of Paulette's head, huh? There's a brief twinkle in her eyes. I can't help it, he shrugs. She's amazing. Ari rolls her eyes. Whatever. I also brought you something else. He leans over to dig through the overstuffed backpack. Oh, God, don't tell me they're going to make me do homework while I'm stuck at home. No, it's nothing like that. Well, I mean, they are, but that's not what I'm talking about. He pulls out half a roll of duct tape. When I gave your grandma your tape player, it looked like it was in kind of rough shape. I figured if you had something to hold it together, you might be able to get it to play again. Ari scooches closer to the foot of the bed so she can take the roll. Thank you. Her voice is soft and low. She places the duct tape on the bedside table, wedged between the Walkman and her crepe. I think that'll work. Great. Nachua flushes, a bit sheepish at the gratitude, and turns his head. Now, come on, let's go eat on the veranda. Just because the doctor told you not to dance doesn't mean you're chained to a bed. I know it doesn't, but getting up makes me really tired. You don't have to go to school until you're better, so what difference does it make if you're tired? I also did bring you some homework, so you should at least enjoy what's left of the day before you realize how far behind you are on the French reading. Ugh, I don't even want to know. Come on, Ari. He gestures toward the door, undoubtedly trying to get into the fresh air on the veranda, away from the stale sweat and sleep that's invaded every corner of her room. The open window really didn't help as much as she hoped. All right. She slides her feet to the floor and throws the blanket back, revealing a pair of very ratty pajamas. I know it's only your veranda, but you really can't go out wearing that. Nachua eggs are on. He scoops up the 2 leftover crepes from their spot on the chest. I'll close the door behind me so you can get some clean clothes on. Reluctantly, she agrees, but she's past the point of caring. She's felt numb about everything in the last few days, and she's exhausted from telling Nachua most of the reasons she's against the adoption. But she gets dressed anyway for his sake, easing into a pair of cargo pants and a wrinkled t-shirt. She grabs the walking cane Pop Tama left for her on Monday before heading out to the veranda. See? That wasn't so hard, he speaks around a mouthful of crepe from his spot in a cushioned lawn chair. Yeah, Ari replies and sinks into her father's rocker with a sigh. Papa says thank you for the crepe, by the way. The egg and ham ones are his favorite. Where's yours? Oh, I forgot it in my room. Want me to go get it? Nah, forget it. I'm not that hungry anyway. Are you kidding me? You really don't have to be hungry to eat one of Mr. Osweigo's crepes. They're too delicious to go to waste. Good point, she replies, good point. If you want to grab it, feel free to stop by the fridge to get yourself something to drink. We've got coconut milk, water, tea, maybe even some soda in there. Thanks. He heads inside, and Ari can hear him clattering around in the fridge and looking for glasses. When he reemerges on the veranda, she's staring off into space at the trees outside of the closed-in patio. He clears his throat and motions toward the crepe, which is balanced precariously on top of 2 glasses of tea. "Thanks," she mumbles as she grabs the crepe. She nibbles some more and takes a delicate sip of the tea, but she stays silent. Nacho takes the hint and looks off into the distance between bites of crepe. They watch wordlessly as the sun disappears behind the trees. Half an hour later, no-no flies are swarming the porch light. He stands up, crumpling the paper wrapper from his crepe. "I should probably head home. If you need any company when your dad starts flying again or whatever, you know you can always give me a call." "Thanks." "Want some help going back into the house?" "No, I think I'm going to stay here for a little bit." "Okay. Good night, Ari." "Night, Nachua, and thanks for everything." "Anytime." She watches him walk down the steps and cross the dirt driveway towards Fare. He turns to look back at her. Even though she knows he can't tell where she's looking, she averts her eyes anyway. She stays there, staring into the darkness, until Papa calls for her frantically. He'd forgotten she was still outside. What do you think? Good Q&A?
Yeah.
All right. All right, questions? Quiet crowd. I guess you got your fill of me earlier. Yeah.
So, what made you gravitate towards this story?
Yeah, so initially I just wanted to write about somebody who was afraid to fly, and I wanted to push them onto the airplane and see what happened. So I thought, okay, rare cancer, living in the middle of the ocean, that'll do it. But then the more I researched, like, the details of this area, the more I realized how much there was to this story and how important it was and how it needed to be told. I went looking for, books about this so that I could learn about it, and I didn't really find any. So that really told me that I needed to press on and continue with this story. So it was kind of an accident that I ended up in this part of the world, but I'm happy to say it was a very happy accident.
Your next book is also, you said, going to be set on the other side of the globe. Do you think there's something that's drawing you to like a more distant locale or culture?
Yeah, I think that for me, first of all, I'm definitely living vicariously through my writing. But there's also more to it than that. I think that it's easier for people to see objective truth when it's presented in a way that is unfamiliar, rather than getting defensive about, maybe the way that we treat indigenous people or the way we treat our planet. It's much easier to, kind of let your guard down and feel that empathy towards people who are maybe in a plight that you don't immediately recognize and have an opinion about. So that's kind of how I've thought about what I'm doing with my writing. But I think the book after the one I'm writing now will probably be set closer to home. Yeah.
In the earlier session, you talked a lot about the research that you did. Probably sometimes be procrastination, but it's all really great. And just hearing you talk just now made me wonder about this phrase, like write what you know or write from your own experiences. How much are you balancing like what happened in your own life with all of that huge amount of research that you've done?
Yeah, great question. So really what I think about that advice to write what you know, if you take it to its extreme, you're left only with autobiography. And honestly, I don't think anyone needs any more stories about cis white women. I don't think they need that. So for me, I look for stories that maybe people don't really know about. But in the end, a lot of these experiences are very fully human. Nachua in this story grows up with an absent father. And while the circumstances of that may be very different, I know what that feels like. My father did not meet his dad until he was in his 30s. and their relationship was always very strained. And, growing up, I could see the emotional toll that experience took on him. And so even though this at first feels very strange and culturally different, I think there's also a lot that enforces just how much we're all the same. So that's, I think, another way to practice empathy with everyone. So, yeah. Yeah.
You said in the master class, you have to really, before you put your work out there, you have to really believe in it. I was just wondering, what has been your experience finding the confidence in your own writing, becoming confident to just share it with the world, but also internally heck yeah, that's my writing.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say that you're never going to believe it's perfect. Never. But I liken that too. If you're a cross stitcher, for example, the front of your work may look absolutely beautiful, but if you turn it around, you're always going to see the knots holding it together in the back. And so for me, if I can read it after, 3 months or 6 months or 8 months, and I don't hate it, and I think, okay, this is still a good story. Maybe there's places I can see the knots a little too clearly and I want to fix it, but I don't want to throw away the whole story. That's how I know that I'm ready to share it. But I think everyone's going to have a different point at which they're ready. And so it's important to listen to your own gut and your own feelings about that, because it's deeply personal. Yeah. Any other questions? I did a few. Honestly, I would do more if I had more time in the day. But one thing I did that was unexpectedly positive was I went on a podcast. And I say it was unexpectedly great. I really hate listening to podcasts. But it was a really relaxed way for me to really talk about some of the deeper meanings and feelings behind my writing. And so I think it's really helpful to get people to see you as a writer and what your values are. And so then they kind of understand what to expect from you, even though the next book you're writing isn't going to be anything like the book you just wrote. So I think it's really important and probably something I should dedicate a little more time to, but, oh.
No, honestly, but it really would probably help in terms of publicity if you can find places that will do.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, one more thing to add to my to-do list. Thanks, Bennett. All right, any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much. This has been so fun and so wonderful. Glad to be back. I will yield the floor.
Oh, thank you. I will take the floor back very briefly. Just to note, thank you again, Bekkah, for a wonderful reading and masterclass. Thanks to the IT crew over there for keeping us alive and well. There's Cole peeking around the corner with the wave. Love it. Reminder that there are books over here. Talk to me. Bekkah will sign. Things are good. And keep an eye out for our next visiting writer, who is the poet Gail Marie Thompson, who's coming on March 5th. She'll be doing a master class over in faculty parlors this time with an hour break in between and then a reading right back here. Thank you for coming, and thanks again to our visiting writer, Bekkah Frisch.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, I have blue pens and purple pens, so I can sign for odds or evens.
Oh, well done. Well done.